She thought ruining her life in front of 200 students would break her, but the slap that echoed through the entire auditorium became the spark that transformed a quiet, invisible girl into the legend everyone would soon fear. Before you dive in, hit subscribe so you never miss stories where justice flips, bullies fall, and broken hearts rise stronger than ever. The slap cracked across the auditorium like a gunshot, sharp, humiliating, unforgettable, and for a heartbeat the entire crowd of 200 students froze, their laughter trapped in their throats as the red handprint bloomed across Mia Lane's cheek, the shy scholarship girl who had spent 3 years trying to blend into the background of Ridgewood High, desperately avoiding the pack of bullies led by Brielle Hart, the principal's daughter and the self-appointed queen of everything cruel. But no matter how much Mia tried to stay invisible, fate dragged her into the spotlight on the day that changed everything, the day she walked onto the stage to give her first public presentation, hands trembling as she clutched her speech note cards, her voice barely a whisper, her courage hanging by a thread, yet it was enough to enrage Brielle, who, jealous that Mia had won the academic award that she believed belonged to her by birthright, strutted onto the stage mid-presentation and, in front of every student, teacher, and even her own father, slapped Mia with the full force of entitlement, shouting, "Know your place." As the crowd gasped, phones raised, the humiliation recorded from every angle, and Mia's note cards scattered like broken feathers across the polished wooden floor. But as Brielle smirked, believing she had once again crushed the quiet girl, something inside Mia cracked, not in the way that breaks you, but in the way that releases everything you've held back for far too long. She stood there silent for a long moment, her breath shaking, the heat in her cheek spreading, but when she finally lifted her head, her eyes were no longer soft, frightened, or apologetic. They were calm, razor-sharp, and terrifyingly steady, and the moment she met Brielle's smug stare, every student felt the temperature in the room drop. Mia calmly bent down, gathered her scattered papers one by one with a grace that unnerved everyone, stood up straight, and said into the microphone in the softest but clearest voice, "If you're going to slap me, at least make it worth my time," and the entire auditorium erupted in whispers, because this wasn't the Mia they knew, this was someone new, someone dangerous. Brielle scoffed and stepped closer, lifting her hand again to strike, but Mia caught her wrist midair, her fingers tightening with surprising strength, the crowd collectively gasping as Mia leaned in and whispered something only Brielle could hear, though the terror that flickered in Brielle's eyes hinted at the weight of Mia's words. Then Mia released her, stepped back to the microphone, and said, "Let me start over," launching into a presentation so confident, articulate, commanding, and brilliant that the entire auditorium forgot to blink, every sentence hitting with the precision of a speech champion, every idea unfolding with power, vulnerability, and a quiet intensity that demanded respect. Even the teachers looked stunned, some tearing up, and Principal Hart sat frozen, unable to defend his daughter's violence while witnessing the student he had underestimated shining brighter than any Ridgewood High had ever seen. By the end, the applause was thunderous, not polite, not obligated, but genuine, roaring, unstoppable, the kind of applause usually reserved for heroes who rise from ashes. Brielle stormed out crying, her friends scattering behind her like startled insects, while Mia walked calmly off stage. Unaware that the video had already gone viral online, spreading across platforms with captions like, "Shy girl destroys bully with one speech," and, "The slap that changed everything." Overnight, Mia became a symbol of resilience, courage, and the girl who stood tall when everyone expected her to crumble. But the real twist wasn't the fame, it was the darkness it revealed, because while everyone celebrated Mia, Brielle's parents panicked, desperate to erase the scandal, offering Mia money, apologies, a public statement blaming stress on Brielle's behavior, but Mia refused everything, instead choosing something far more devastating. She filed a formal report against Brielle and Principal Hart, detailing years of harassment that the administration had ignored. A board investigation launched immediately, uncovering shocking evidence, emails, complaints, testimony from dozens of students who finally felt brave enough to speak now that Mia had taken the first step. Brielle's father was suspended, disciplinary action escalated, and for the first time in the school's history, the power imbalance shattered. But Mia's story didn't end with revenge, because as she rose, she lifted others with her, creating a support group called Stand Tall, where victims could talk, heal, and learn the art of fighting back with dignity instead of violence. The club exploded in popularity, becoming the largest student-led movement the school had ever seen. Mia was invited to speak at youth conferences, winning awards, scholarships, and opportunities she never dared to dream of. But while the world praised her, Brielle spiraled, losing her status, her friends, her untouchable reputation, until one day she showed up to the Stand Tall meeting trembling, eyes red, voice barely functional as she whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't know how to stop being the person everyone expected me to be." And though the room stiffened with shock, Mia simply nodded and said, "Healing starts when we stop pretending," opening the door for Brielle to finally confront her own demons. Over the months that followed, the two girls who once stood on opposite sides of cruelty found themselves, unexpectedly, as allies in rebuilding a broken school culture, proving that even the worst pain could become the foundation for transformation. And years later, when both graduated with honors, Mia giving the valedictorian speech and Brielle giving the redemption speech that had the whole auditorium crying, they walked across the stage side by side, no longer enemies, no longer defined by one slap, but by the courage that came after, the growth that followed, and the extraordinary truth that sometimes the moments meant to break us become the moments that rewrite our entire destiny.